We moved out from the suburbs in Western Washington to having 22 acres and going headfirst into the homesteading lifestyle and really knowing nothing. And I want to share with you 10 tips that I learned the hard way that I wish that I had known before I started homesteading. So my husband and I moved onto our homestead about 4 years ago, coming up on 4 years ago. And we had no homesteading experience, no farm experience, no animal experience outside of like cats and dogs. We were just living on the dream of wanting to homestead and jumped in head first. And we learned some things the hard way, and they've all been good lessons. And we still love homesteading and we still love living here, but adjusting from living in the suburbs on not even a 1/4 acre lot to 22 acres of homestead and getting chickens and doing pigs and a huge garden was a huge adjustment. And we, like I said, went head first and learned some things the hard way. So if you're thinking about homesteading, don't be discouraged. Just learn from me. Learn from some of the things that I had to learn the hard way. The first thing that humbled me and brought me back down to earth was the fact that I can't do it all. When we were living in the suburbs and dreaming about this life and planning about moving out here, I wanted it all. I wanted to do it all. I wanted to get chickens and pigs and turkeys and geese and ducks, and I wanted a milk cow, and I wanted to raise beef cows, and I want a huge garden, and I want to can everything. And I just had these huge dreams and goals, and really not really any experience with any of it. And when we first moved here, we just started trying to do everything and quickly realized that we can't do everything. We quickly realized that we couldn't do it all. Within our first 6 months of moving here, we had to buy some equipment. We needed a tractor, we needed a riding lawnmower, a log splitter, some tools, and then we got right into chickens. And all of those things can very quickly soak up all the excess cash that you have, which it did for us. And then we kind of hit a roadblock of, okay, well, we've done some of the things on our list, but now we can't afford to do more things because we've used up all the cash that we thought was going to be good enough. And then also just not knowing enough when you're getting started. You just can't do it all. And that leads into my second thing that we learned is that you have to start slow. It's okay to start slow. It's okay if you get to your homestead and you just start gardening, you don't get into chickens, you don't do all the things, or you just pick 1 or 2 things to get good at before you start expanding. A prime example for us is, like I said, we lived in the suburbs. I had a garden and I gardened in the suburbs. I had a beautiful flower garden, like little flower beds, and I had a vegetable garden. But my vegetable garden was like 12 foot by 4 feet raised beds. And when we moved here, the previous owner had a garden that we went straight into putting in new fencing and refab the whole thing. But I went from a 12 foot by 4 foot garden to 2,000 square feet of garden space. And I was really inexperienced. I mean, I had grown like a tomato plant and some kale and like some zucchini and maybe a few other things before. And then I tried to plant 4 30-foot long rows of tomatoes and potatoes and trying to do 2,000 square feet of garden, and didn't know how to keep up on the weeds, didn't know how to amend my garden, didn't know how to keep up with any of it, and failed. Just utterly failed. I mean, we got a few things out of that garden and out of subsequent gardens, but it would have been so much better if I had just started slowly, if I had started even just not going to the big garden and just starting with something right out front of our house, maybe a little bigger than what I was used to, and got more skills under my belt before I was trying to do all the things. It just, when you fail to start slowly, you can quickly discourage yourself, and then also just through your ignorance can, again, waste a lot of money, waste a lot of time, waste a lot of effort. And I did in my first garden. The third lesson that I learned is all good things will come with time and hard work. Kind of going back to you can't do it all. You probably go on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook or wherever, and you'll see these homesteaders that are doing all the things. Maybe you even look at my YouTube and my blog and think, I'm doing all the things. But these things happen over time. You're not going to walk onto a fresh homestead and have everything you want. Unless you're just made of money and already have a lot of skills under your belt, you're not going to be able to manage cows, chickens, garden, pigs, canning, preserve, you're not going to be able to do everything on day one. Rome was not built in a day, and your homestead's not going to be built in a day either, or even a year, or even a handful of years. And what we learned quickly was if we just pick a handful of things to try each year to add on, or maybe it's even just one or two things, or just improving on what you have, you will be able to build your homestead over time. Our first year, we got used to just having property and splitting wood and managing so much land, and we got chickens and we gardened. And like I said before, the garden was an utter disaster. But we started somewhat small with those things. And then the next year we added on turkeys because we knew we could do chickens. Turkeys are pretty similar, so we added on turkeys. And then the following year we added on pigs. And each year I've been improving on the garden and improving other skills. So it comes with time and it comes with hard work. Don't move on to a homestead or start trying to live this lifestyle thinking that it's as easy as add to cart or hiring somebody to come and do it for you, which sometimes you can hire people to do things for you and sometimes you'll have to. But again, it's hard work. You're not going to catch me saying that even chickens, which I think are some of the easiest animals to have, are not with hard work. You got to build the coop. You got to clean everything out. You got to feed them and water them. It's not easy, and that's not why we live this life for ease. The other thing that I learned the hard way was that community matters. And this is something similarly related to you can't do it all. And you certainly can't do everything by yourself. From the dawn of time, families would get really good at a trade or two. They'd have a specialty, and that would be the thing that they would sell, that they would barter, that they would provide a service. And then each family in the community would have a different trade, a different product that they would make. And that can be a lot better than mediocrity of trying to do everything by yourself, because you're not going to be able to be excellent at everything. You're not going to even be able to be good at everything. Now, you can be good at lots of things, but you won't be able to do everything yourself. So, get good at raising chickens, or get really good at raising cows or making cheese, or, pick something. Get really good at a couple of things on your homestead and then slowly add to it, and then rely on other people who are really good at the things that you're not good at. The other aspect of getting to know your community is there are going to be times where your truck's going to get stuck, or a part breaks, or the cows get out, and you need help from a friend, you need help from a neighbor. And knowing your neighbors, knowing your community, so you know who you can call when you're in a pinch, is really important. And when you live on land like this, when you get your homestead, I can't tell you how many times we've had a windstorm or a snowstorm or whatever, something happens and my husband and I can't figure it out by ourselves, or can't do it by ourselves. We don't have the equipment, or maybe my husband's not home and Yursa, hey, no. Maybe my husband's not home and I can't do it by myself, and I call a neighbor or I call a friend. You need to know your community. Another thing that I learned is you have to be a self-starter, which me personally, just my personality, I didn't necessarily have to learn this the hard way because I just tend to be a self-starter, but something that you're going to learn by living this homestead lifestyle is nobody's going to hold your hand. There are going to be other homesteaders, people on YouTube, people in your community, blogs, what have you, other homesteaders that are going to cheer you on and be your cheerleaders and help teach you and help guide you. But cheerleaders don't win the football game. You need to go and do the hard work. You need to be a self-starter. And there's no amount of reading the blogs, reading the books, watching the YouTube videos, whatever, learning, that's going to go build that fence. Sure, yeah, do the research, go learn how to build the fence. But the fact of the matter is that you're going to have to go out there and build the fence. The sixth thing that I had to learn that I wish I knew before we started homesteading was the lesson of learning to make do or go without. Things are expensive, and when you're homesteading, especially if you live out like I do, out in the country like I do, you can't just run to the store for things, or you might not be able to afford to do the best of the best for everything. You need to learn to make do with what you have sometimes, just around on the homestead. Or if you can't make do with what you have, then you need to learn to do without, or wait on that project until you can afford to get the good stuff. A prime example for us was with the pigs, which it's winter right now, like you can see. We don't have pigs this time of year, but when we first started pigs, we knew that we needed good fencing to contain them. I didn't want the pigs running around wild, getting eaten by whatever kind of beast thought they would be tasty out here. We needed fencing to contain them, and that meant getting good gates, and that meant getting good electric fencing and getting the good stuff. And we had to go without pigs until we could afford to do that, until we were ready to do that. But one thing with the pigs that we learned to make do with was their shelter, like this. As you can see, this is not fancy. This shelter is made up of pallets that we just had collecting dust in our barn. And we save money by making the pig shelter out of pallets instead of going to the hardware store, Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever, getting a bunch of expensive lumber and building a Taj Mahal for pigs who honestly are just going to make a mess of it anyways. We save money by using pallets that were collecting dust. Now, we did get roofing panels, which I don't remember what that cost, but we had to get one roofing panel and then cut that down to size for the shelter. And we had the hardware, like the nails, on hand, but everything, and we had the pallets on hand. So really, it was whatever the cost of the roofing panel was. We learned to make do with what we had around the homestead already and learn to do without and wait on getting the pigs until we could do the fence properly. So learn to make do with what you have or go without. Another thing that I learned the hard way, and I wish I knew before, was sometimes less is more. Going back to the garden, our first year gardening here was an utter failure. And I would have done so much better if I had picked a smaller plot, maybe started a smaller garden closer to the house, or even just took this garden behind me and didn't do the full 2,000 square feet, just did a third of that and got good at that and then built on that over time. I would have been so much less discouraged. I would have wasted less money, less time, less effort, and I would have been more successful because I had taken the time to go slow, start small, and grow from there. The same goes for chickens. I nowadays am comfortable having 50-ish egg-laying hens, but when I started with, I think it was 10. So don't go big picture right away and start small. You can grow from there. That's one of the beautiful things about homesteading, is that as you get good at it, as you get better, you can add on more things. You can grow from small little starts. Another thing that we learned was you have to be willing to adapt and learn from failures. Anything you do in life, especially homesteading, and especially if you're learning how to do it, there are going to be times where you start doing a project and you've done all the research and other people are doing it this way, and it just does not translate well to your property, your homestead, your situation. A prime example of that is, we raise our own meat chickens. In our first year, we had just a tiny little A-frame, chicken tractor that we had that was poorly built. We didn't really know what we were doing. We just kind of threw it together. It was heavy, but we were only doing 20 chickens that year. So it wasn't that big of a deal. And then the next year we did chickens. We put all the meat chickens in our big chicken run attached to our barn, which is a nice big chicken run. But that kind of defeats the purpose of having pastured chicken, which we want. So this last summer, we were going bigger scale with the chickens and we wanted them pastured. And there are several YouTubers and homesteaders who do rotational grazing with their chickens. And I followed Justin Rhodes. I don't know if you've checked out their channel, but you should. They have a great channel. And I was watching a bunch of their videos and looking at their stuff where they had the mobile electric poultry netting that you plugged in a portable fence charger and you just move the fence, and they had new grass every couple of days, and it just seemed like the greatest system, and it was foolproof. So this last year we got the fencing and we got all our chickens. Well, I don't know if I mentioned it, but we live in the middle of the woods. We live in the boonies. In fact, I have a friend who says I live past the boonies. We live far out. There's predators here. And I'm not just talking about coyotes or whatever. We have wolves, cougars, bears. We have eagles and hawks and ravens. And let me tell you, all of them wanted to eat our chickens this last year. And it started out with ravens. And, this mobile electric netting is great, but there's no coverage on top. And these ravens would fly just right in and eat our chickens. So we thought, okay, we'll put some netting over the top. Well, ravens are really smart and they just tore right through it. And it would just obstacle after obstacle. And then a bear came by and started eating them. And it was a nightmare. And eventually my husband very lovingly and graciously came to me and said, honey, I know you are in love with this idea of having this rotational grazing and this electric netting, but this is not working where we are. We're losing a lot of chickens and we're wasting money here. We need to find a different solution. And bless his heart, this man built some efficient chicken tractors that are lightweight, that are completely, covered in chicken wire so nothing can get in, and it protects them, but it has wheels and we can just move it along our grass and they have fresh grass. In the middle of the season, after we had already lost a bunch of chickens, we had to adapt in the middle of the season and learn from our failure. And it sucked, but he made these chicken tractors and it was a perfect solution. So if you fall in love with an idea or a process that everybody else, or you think everybody else is doing on their homestead and it doesn't translate well, pivot, adapt, figure out something that does work on your homestead and learn from failures. Like, don't take it too hard. It's okay. You got to learn from your failures and eat some humble pie every now and again. And Lord knows I have had my fair share of humble pie. Another thing you should know before you start homesteading is that people are going to think you're weird. People are going to think you're weird for living out in the boonies. People are going to think you're weird for cooking everything from scratch or trying to. People are going to think that you're a weird prepper by buying food in bulk. People are going to think it's unnecessary to raise your own meat, because why would you do that when you can pay the big farmers to do it and just get it at the grocery store? Why would you go through all that work to do it yourself? And you need to be okay with that. If you're going to be a homesteader, you can't be afraid of hard work. You can't be afraid of being on the fringe. You can't be afraid of people thinking that you're kind of weird, that they don't get it. Not everybody's going to get it. But the good thing is that there are lots of other homesteaders out there, and you're going to get to know your people. Those people are going to get it. Those people aren't going to think that it's weird to make everything from scratch and raise pigs and butcher animals and have a rapscallion livestock guardian dog like this one, huh? You goofball. This is Yersa. She's our guard pup and clearly deprived for attention. But people are going to think you're weird. And if you're going to be a homesteader, you got to be okay being weird. The last thing that I learned the hard way is you can start before you have land. Again, I had a little garden, but I wasn't doing it for production. I, had some salad greens and did zucchini and kale and tomatoes. But I was not growing efficiently. I could have been really maximizing that garden space. Like, you can grow a lot in that amount of space. And I was just like, okay, I'm happy if I, get some tomatoes and salad greens and whatever. But I could have been utilizing that and really honing in my garden skills and learning a lot. You can start preserving, learning how to can, learning how to dehydrate, maybe even getting a freeze dryer, that sort of stuff. You can start doing that before you have land. You can start bulk buying and learning how to cook from scratch well before you move on to land. I have a very good friend of mine who is a homesteader, and they have, I think it's about a 1/4 acre lot. And it's nice and flat, but they maximize that 1/4 acre. And they consider that, they're still in the city. It's small town Idaho, but they're still in the city. They're in town. But they maximize that. They grow chickens, they raise quail, they have pigs, they do turkeys, they have a garden, and they are just, it's amazing what they can do on a 1/4 acre lot. And let me tell you, even though I have 22 acres and I'm homesteading and doing all this stuff, I want to be my friend when I grow up, because she is milking that 1/4 acre plot for everything it's got, but in a good way. And doing so many things on their homestead. So 10 things that I wish I knew, many of which I learned the hard way. Um, I hope that you don't have to learn the hard way like I did. And again, just start where you are. Start slow. It's okay if you're still in the suburbs, or maybe you're in an apartment in the city and you want to live this homestead life, but it seems like this far off dream. It seemed like a far off dream for me for a long time. But you can start with some garden pots on a windowsill. You can start going to the store and buying a big box of tomatoes and learning how to make tomato sauce, or going on Azure Standard and getting a little bit more food than you normally would, and starting to bulk buy, starting to have things on hand so that you're not having to go to the grocery store every single week. Or if you lose your job, heaven forbid, I hope that doesn't happen, but if you lose your job, you still have food at home to feed your family. Cook from scratch, learn how to bake the bread. Do all those things, start where you are and start slow, and you will grow over time. And before you know it, you could have a big homestead and be doing all the things. And I hope 4 years from now, I will have 10 more lessons that I've learned just being on this journey even longer, and my homestead will be more efficient and producing more, and all those things. Rome was not built in a day. Your homestead's not going to be built in a day either. Mine is not built even for later. But if I look back, we're doing so much more than we were on day one, even though I was trying to do all the things and I had to learn these things the hard way. We'll get there. You'll get there too. So I hope you really enjoyed this video. This video is based on a blog that I just wrote. If you have not checked out the Heavenly Hills Homestead blog, I'm going to have it linked below. I have a couple of other blog posts on there that usually relate to other videos I have. And if you're interested in any Azure Standard videos, I can have that linked here. I also have cooking from scratch videos and motherhood videos and, just homesteading stuff. We're all about homesteading, natural living, and motherhood here. And I'm so glad you're here. I hope you liked the video. Make sure to give us a like and a subscribe and check out the blog. And until next time, welcome to the homestead.